Hello from United Nations headquarters in New York. Thank you very much for joining us for this interview by Africa Renewal with His Excellency, the President of Sierra Leone, President Julius Maada, who happens right now to be the President of the UN Security Council for this month of August 2024. You are pursuing this agenda, as you said, on behalf of all of Africa. You are also involved in the AU C10, pushing for these issues. Africa must have a permanent representation on the Security Council. This issue has been debated for many years. Some people have become skeptical. How is it going to work?
It is going to work. We must stay optimistic and we must give it the forward momentum it needs. It's been on the UN agenda for over 40 years, but there is new spirit. The world has changed and leaders have come and gone. What I'm trying to do is to convince my colleagues in Africa and the world at large to say the injustice that has been done to Africa cannot be accepted. We are going to celebrate 80 years of the United Nations. We cannot do that with the structure, the configuration of the Security Council as we have, which is totally unfair to us as a continent with over 1.3 billion people.
Some people will say support for your push. Support in Africa or support out of Africa. How would you gauge the kind of support you have for this idea?
Well, support from Africa should naturally come because I'm speaking on behalf of Africa. But the main issue we have is that we have the P5, the permanent members of the Security Council. We want to be in the Security Council. They are manning the gate. They have to let us in. They all have recognized the fact that Africa has been treated unfairly and that injustice must be corrected and that Africa should not necessarily wait for the total reform of the UN Security Council, but that we should be prioritized because we have made a strong case and the marginalization has gone on for too long. And so I am optimistic, and that is why I want to call on Africa to fully support this and on the rest of the world too, because we are talking about democracy, fairness, representation, and the fact that we are not there in the Security Council, in the permanent category, and even in the non-permanent category, we are underrepresented. It means that this is not a legitimate organ of the UN security of the UN. Its mandate cannot be easily executed in Africa because it is not fair, it doesn't represent our views. So that is why I strongly believe that with the necessary push and with the commitments made by all the P5 representatives, there is light at the end of the tunnel.
There is light at the end of the tunnel. Do we see that light 2024, 2025, or do we wait until 2045? How soon do you think this can be realized?
I think if we all in Africa and all other groups around the world who stand for fairness, who stand for democracy, who stand for justice, come to our support, we should be able. And I want to implore my colleagues in Africa, the leadership, civil society, everybody, to give the support necessary. Like I've said, this is a club. The Security Council. It's been closed off to us for far too long. We are knocking, but they have not answered. I think we should knock further. And the louder the noise, I think what your question is trying to get out of me is how quickly can we do this? I think they have to see the seriousness. We have to bring it to the consciousness of the world that we have also come of age. Africa represents 54 of the 193 states that make up the United Nations. We are 1.3 billion people. We cannot just be a territory for proxy wars and be used by others. We have a voice. We know what our problems are, and we should have a say. Besides, more than 60% of the issues that are discussed in the Security Council and most of the activities are in Africa. How would you want them to be owned if we are not part of it? So the African leadership needs to wake up again and realize that we cannot be a member of a world organization and not be part of its prime organ, the Security Council, and to have veto power. This is not fair in the 21st century. And I call on all African leaders and for all those who stand for justice and democracy around the world to fight this unfairness.
During your presidency, Sierra Leone's presidency of the Council this month of August, one of the key objectives you have is to unlock Africa's full potential. How would you break this down and say, this is exactly what I mean when I'm pushing that Africa's full potential to be realized?
We are talking about enhanced representation. At the moment, we are only present in the non-permanent category. In the permanent category, there is no African representation. What we are saying is that we want to increase our number in the non-permanent category by 2, and also we are asking for 2 members in the permanent category with a veto power if it is retained. We want to be a full-fledged member of this premier organ of the UN Security of the United Nations. This is where major decisions are taken, and because of our contribution to peace and security around the world, peacekeeping, I think we should be there. It is far too long. We can't be talking about this for 40 years. And that is why the question you asked is very pertinent. When is the Security Council going to recognize that they cannot keep us out of the door? They cannot keep us in oblivion. We are not part, we should be part. If we talk about democracy in our nations, which we have all catering to do, we should also practice democracy in the in an institution, the UN Security Council, that is a premier body for peace and security around the world. This is what I believe in, and this is what I'm trying to get Africans to understand and to help me. We need more voices. We need to make our voices louder and be a voice, let them be voices of reasoning. We want to contribute to what is happening around the world. We think we have perspectives that are pertinent. We think we have what it takes to be part of the world today and not just be a recipient of the largest of others.
How can a continent with over 1.3 billion people, comprising of 54 countries, don't have a permanent seat at the United Nations Security Council with veto powers? What is Africa missing, and why is Africa not on the table? His Excellency William Ruto, President of Kenya, once said, "If you are not on the table, that means you are on the menu. Africa has been on the menu for far too long and wants to be on the table to decide how that menu can be or should be structured. Why is Africa not having a permanent seat at the United Nations Security Council with veto powers? Are the people of Africa not fit enough for their voice to be heard and to influence global decisions? Why are the gatekeepers reluctant to let Africa into the United Nations Security Council? Is there something that is on that menu that they don't want Africa to see or do what is right for the people of Africa, or is just a complete lack of respect for Africa? These are some of the questions that we should ask ourselves as Africans. Seek for knowledge. Ask questions to acquire knowledge. That is the basis at which we as Africans can get to understand what is going on at the world stage. It does not make sense that African countries will vote for matters that they were not part of when it was drafted, even if it doesn't favor Africa. That is historical injustice for Africa. The United Nations Security Council needs to be reformed. Africa has a role to play at the international stage. Africa cannot continue to be takers of decisions that have been decided by other countries on their behalf. Africa wants to be part of that decision-making process and put the interests of their population at heart before voting on a decision that they have also contributed to draft. As long as Africa don't have a permanent seat at the United Nations Security Council with veto power, Africa will continue to look for strategic partners to push for their own agendas at the UN Security Council. And we all know that always comes with a price, because the gatekeepers will always impose on them some certain conditions before their matters can be heard and voted for using their veto powers, which is disadvantageous to Africa. It is like giving something to somebody on the table and take it back under the table. Africa deserves 2 permanent seats at the United Nations Security Council with veto powers to influence decisions at the world stage and for the voice of the population of Africa to be heard. I have an idea. Since the gatekeepers at the United Nations Security Council are not willing to let Africa in, Africa should look for an alternative of the UN Security Council and create a United States of Africa and forget about seats anywhere. Rather, the world will request a membership to join the United States of Africa because unity is our strength. Africa, wake up. Africa, rise up. Africa without borders. Africa, continental free trade area. The time is now. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.